This is Jeremy Ian Thomas again. I wanted to show off some stuff that I've been playing around with here in Live 9 with the audio to Midi. I think a lot of most of my friends, we're all hip hop producers, and we grew up on Pete Rock and Dilla and Premier and Large Professor and Diamond D and all that type of stuff. And we're all into vinyl, and through that vinyl we became fans of musicians, and we really appreciate the playing. So it's kind of a tough thing, or for some people it's a tough thing because they feel like the aspect of playing is being computerized. And I agree with that to some extent. I mean, I think there's no substitute for learning an instrument. Absolutely not. But what I think is interesting is, and that coming from people who sample, I think is kind of ironic. I feel the same way, so it's ironic for me as well. But what I wanted to do is try something new today, which was chop up the sample, which is what we already do. And for those of you that don't know what that is, we find a record that we really like and we chop it into pieces and we rework the melody and we replay it and we try to do interesting things with it so that it sounds original, and it's an art. I mean, there's been some amazing people to come along in this art form to do stuff with samples that are just mind-blowing. One of those being James Yancey or Jay Dilla, JD. And then on another side of the spectrum is somebody like DJ Shadow, who, before a lot of this technology, was finding multiple samples and layering them and stuff. All right, enough talking. I'm going to show you guys what I did. This is a João Gilberto, who's the husband of Astrud Gilberto, a sample called, I believe it's pronounced Corcovado, and it's, here, check it out. And that's Astrud singing.
Quiet chords from my guitar, floating on the silence that surrounds us. Quiet thoughts and quiet.
Okay, so there's more to it, but this is what I did with it. So yeah, there you get the idea for kind of what I did. And what I thought would be cool is, instead of just going through and making a beat while I record one of these, which is kind of tough because it's an exploration process, and as I'm going, it doesn't always sound good, and it's always kind of like I want to shut it off when I'm in the middle of that because it doesn't sound right. But as any of us know that work on music, it's kind of like molding clay. But anyways, here's the drum rack. I have a slicing preset and stuff, but this is one of my drum racks that I already preloaded with a bunch of drums that I like. But I decided to use this, and then I have a clap over here. And for those of you that are wondering what this is called the Fet Compressor from Softtube, and dude, it makes your drums crunchy, man. I mean, they sound good there, but it really kind of gives it that grit. So there's the drums. And then again, I use the dub maker, which I didn't really explain in the last video. The dub maker is just a preset, and if you look at in here, it's a preset from Analog, which is the synth inside of one of the synths inside of Ableton. But it's not in the current Live 9, it's in the Live 8, and it's all the way back here, but I'm not going to show you guys again. But this is Dub Maker. as you can see, it sounds fantastic. And then you've got some macros here. If I'm controlling it, let's see. You've got a cutoff, you've got an LFO, there's all kinds of stuff. But anyways, that's the bass, and those two together is like. Okay, let me get rid of this. And then here, let me show you kind of what happened. So this is the sample, and then make sure, I don't know if I already turned all of these into, let's see. Yeah, okay, so that's just the chop. So that's a bunch of different chops, and it was. So each one of those is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have them kind of long, so they have tails. But that's the chop, and then what I did from there was turn. Basically, I sliced to MIDI. So the sample was there first, which is what I unfortunately just erased. So this was the sample. I went in and grabbed the loop that I wanted. And, you know, this was the part I liked. Basically, pretty much the whole song was a short song. And then I right-clicked, sliced to new MIDI track. And for those of you that aren't familiar, that's kind of how you can slice this stuff up. And there's all these presets, but I actually created my own, which is called Jeremy's Gensu. And it's a preset. If any of you guys want it, just let me know, and I'll give it to you. But this is what it looks like when you do that. Here's Jeremy's Gensu here, and it renames it to whatever the track is. And all I did was grab a simpler and essentially go through and create some macros. So, you know, I put a sorry about that. I put a erosion in here. As you see, that macro is just controlling that right there on the erosion here, which is all inside of this rack. And then there's a limiter, and then I did some macro assigning some MIDI mapping to the release and the pitch and LFOs and stuff here inside. And that's pretty simple. That's a whole other tutorial. Anyways, so this doesn't get too long. Then what I did from there was I did the chop, and then what I did was bounce it out to create it, or turn it into just an audio file, which is what this is. And the way you do that is, once you do your chops, because that's the only way you're going to be able to turn it into MIDI. You can't turn MIDI into MIDI. And essentially what that audio to MIDI is taking an audio file and turning it into MIDI. So what you have to do is do what's called a freeze. There's a few ways to do this, but this is how I do it. I copy it over so I have my original. I right-click and freeze track. It'll turn blue. What it's essentially doing, anybody who uses Photoshop, which I know some of you do, this is like rasterizing a Photoshop image or flattening a Photoshop image. You're taking all of the pieces and just turning it into one flat thing. Then you come here, right-click, flatten. And there it is. It's an audio file. But you know, I didn't. Here's that. I'm not going to leave that in there. Right? And then from there, I right-click, and it's convert harmony to MIDI. So what's interesting about this is now it's not only just the sample, it's my interpretation of the sample, and then me turning that into a harmony. And it takes a little while on this one because the transients are pretty defined. It kind of slows down in the middle. And I did a lot of editing to this afterwards, which I won't get into now for the sake of time. I don't want this to be a really, really long tutorial. Let's see. So there you go. It's going, it's going. Alright. Boom. So let's solo that and let's play it. Alright, so it's kind of all over the place, but what was cool was I immediately just decided, okay, let me put a you know, let me put a Rhodes on there. And this is another company, which I mentioned in my last tutorial. They're called Applied Acoustic Systems, and they actually built analog and a few of the synths inside of Ableton, but they also have their own plugs. And this is one that I highly recommend. I think it's $199. That's what I paid for it. It's basically a Rhodes emulator, and it's amazing. This is that interpreted audio to MIDI with some editing. So it's basically layered in. You know, it's a little sloppy on its own, and I didn't do a ton of editing, but the sound is just amazing. And this is fingering and stuff that I obviously don't have the ability to do. And this preset is based after Led Zeppelin's No Quarter, so it's already got that sound. Really nice plug. That was what I did first, and if you take the sample out, let's see here. Let me take this. So it really helps fill it in, and it just gives you another, you know, another option for, you know, layering it. So then on top of that, I think you guys heard, this one's a little less realized, but so that's essentially, let's see what I got going on over here. This is a contact instrument, and it's another one of these. It's called Retro Machines, which is a really dope plug, and it's what contact is, for those that aren't aware. It's a sampler, and so all of these they're not necessarily synths. They're like samples basically of old machines. And I think this is a Quadra. Yeah, this is a Quadra, and I have an appreciator on there, so that's in there. And then what I did here, and this is another trick I'll show you guys. I found out what key it was in, and I believe it was, I want to say it was F major. Let me check. A major, sorry, A minor. And what accompanies A minor, luckily, is a C major. And once you know that, you can play around and do your own chords. But here's a trick that I'm going to show you guys that I use quite often, especially once I find out what key something is in. It helps me to find chord progressions. This is something created by a guy named Hendrik Swartz, and he's like a pretty famous electronic musician from Germany. And he made this in Max for Live. It's called the Schwarzenator, and I'll turn the appreciator off here. So that's a C major, right? And this is a preset he has called Leave My Black Keys Alone, which happens to be in C major. Then what you do, I'm literally hitting one key on the keyboard, right? That's C3, and it's creating a C major. Then I'll go up to C sharp here. That's creating an entirely different chord. So now within the C major scale, I have all these different chord progressions. Now, this isn't my main melody or anything, but it's great to layer this over top, right? So check this out over top of the sample. Let me put the appreciator on again. So that's adding a lot of life. And let me show you what I did here as well. I used an auto pan, which is a effect in Ableton, and it just, all it's doing is panning left to right. Let's see. Very nice, very nice. And then I'm using the awesome new Convolution Reverb. I didn't do anything to it. I just slapped it on there, and I think I made a couple little adjustments. Let me let you hear what that's doing. So that's with. That's without. This thing is amazing, dude. just gives it a ton of space. I mean, it's an amazing amount of space. And then over here, let's see, I'm just getting rid of stuff as I go. I did a filtering of the sample, which for all of us, I don't know if that's, I need to, let me let you. It's essentially the same sample, and I just threw an auto filter on there, pulled the Q up, the quality, and then brought it back just to kind of filter it out, and then I added an erosion. What I like about, essentially it's a bit reduction, what I like about it is it gives the top end some personality, so, and it makes it sound like an SP1200 a little bit, which was an old 8-bit, one of the first hip-hop kind of samplers, that and the S950. So yeah, that's the filter. You put that with the drums, bass, our little ARP. So we got a nice thing going. And then what I did here was inside of this is essentially, I'll let you hear this. So that is the same audio to MIDI from the sample that I chopped. And I threw a pad from, this is another plug called Albino 3 from Rob Papin. That's really amazing synth, especially for pad sounds. So that's just some texture. You may or may not like that. I think it's cool. I don't use it very often. It's just something to vary it up. And then the new compressor here in Ableton is really great, man. It's just a lot better. And I think that I think Cytomic helped them out with this as well, not just the glue, which I think I used on my master bus, which I'll get to in a second. But let's see. And I sidechained it, right? So I'm sure people that are listening to this know what sidechaining is. For those that don't, what you're essentially doing is using the compressor, using another instrument to modulate. It's similar to FM synthesis. So I'm using, in this case, a hi-hat in my drum track to modulate this pad sound. So listen to this. So that's with the compressor and sidechaining. It's dope, right? Without, still really great, and I'm using an auto pan as well. But I love this because it just kind of adds to the groove. What you're probably used to hearing is something like this, which is me using the kick. So I'm actually going to go back here to, what's cool is if you don't know what's, because I have a lot of drums in there, you don't know what's being used. There, that hi-hat. It's cool, right? I mean, it works. So there's that. And then over here, I didn't love this, but it's the same thing. I'm using, it's the top end information from my audio to MIDI from the sample. So let me show you that. So I went in, this is another contact instrument. This is called Session Strings from, this is all Native Instruments. And this is a pizzicato, I believe. Pizzicato, excuse me. Yeah, so I mean, and that's just in there for a little bit of. Sorry, I'm just grooving. I literally just made this. And then just the last thing on my master bus here is for those of you that aren't up on FabFilter, man, you got to get up on FabFilter. They make a bunch of stuff, and this is a limiter. Now, I have a ton of different limiters, and there's a million ways to limit something, but I really, really dig this limiter. So it's very visual. I love the design, and it's really transparent. And then on here, I'm using the new glue compressor just to give it some oomph. And that's it, man. In other tutorials, I'll show you, more about how I chop and all of that stuff. But yeah, man, that is about it. And I really did end up liking this joint. I think it's pretty fresh. All right, y'all. Take care, and until next time, peace.